everyone, and thank you for joining our session this morning. This is our first of 3 webinars with Mattioli Woods. Some of you may have joined our previous sessions with Mattioli Woods before, and this is a completely new topic that we are going to be covering today. So if you haven't already, make sure you go and register for the other 2 webinars that are going to be coming up in February. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Hannah. There will be, I think we'll cover this at the end, but there will be a follow-up, so the session will be recorded. So if you do want to refer back to anything at any point or share the presentation with your colleagues, you can. And also please ask any questions that you have throughout the session. Over to you.
Thank you, Misha. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar facilitated by PayCheck, your trusted payroll bureau, and delivered by Mattioli Woods. We are employee benefit experts. This is the first of 3 short 25-minute webinars where we will be exploring the secrets of a great benefit package. The first webinar in this series is going to look at themes which are important to employees in their early career. During these times when employers are finding it tricky to recruit the ideal candidates, where employers are facing spiralling salary competition when trying to retain their best people, ensuring that the reward package is relevant for employees entering into the workplace will ideally place employers at the front of the line with their staff. We do understand that getting the pay levels right is an essential aspect of total reward. And if the pay isn't right, no amount of extra employee benefits will necessarily resolve that issue. But however, in our experience, employers are willing to treat employees as individuals and cater for their needs. Those employers are really set apart from the rest of the market. Your speakers today are myself, Hannah Dolding. I'm a senior employee benefit consultant from Mattioli Woods. My role for the last 20 plus years is to help employers tailor benefit packages from voluntary, online, engaging options through to the more traditional pension and wellbeing benefits. I'm joined today by Adrian Firth, who is our Mattioli Woods in-house expert in relation to financial education. Adrian's got a vast amount of experience in terms of engaging with employees at different life stages, helping understand the issues they face and supporting them with questions regarding benefit packages and broader financial matters. Mattioli Woods are a national employee benefit and wealth management firm. We've got over 800 people across the UK. During this session, we're going to be referring to anecdotal comments from a small population of our colleagues in their different life stages when asked what's important to them. This is broadly intended to add colour to the secrets we'll share about the great benefit package. Whilst we appreciate interviewing employees of a financial firm may not represent the entire population of workers in the UK, or indeed your firm, we were thrilled that common themes came through which reflect similar comments from our client-based employees too. Our discussion is going to take approximately 25 minutes. Then we would like to open up the call to questions, and please do feel free to pop any questions as we go through in the chat as well. All of these questions will be anonymous or treated anonymously. So in preparation for the webinar, we interviewed a population of 20 staff in order to see if there was any commonality of opinion, as well as understanding the diversity of comments which echo the experience we have when sharing thoughts with our corporate client employees. When considering what employees want or need, there really are 3 simple questions to ask them about their views on benefits. And this is how we approached our own colleagues in each of the benefit interviews. Now, before we go into the results, have a think about these 3 questions in front of you. Put yourself into the mindset of someone in their early career. Perhaps you are in your early career yourself. I'm going to give you a few moments to think about this. And if you would like to pop any immediate thoughts down in the confidential chat, that would be great. Remember, this is thinking about someone in their early career and what they would want. So the first question is, what is important to you in terms of the benefit package you currently have? The purpose of this question is to get employees thinking about their current situation.
Yeah, hi, morning, Hannah. Well, I think first of all, it's really important, again, to kind of set the scene with the groups that we're talking about. So the people in the very early stages of their career, they might be in their first or their second job. And if we look at their lives in the build up to that point, we unfortunately in the UK, we still don't teach kind of financial well-being in schools and colleges and universities. So they are coming into the workplace without any experience of managing their income versus their expenditure. And a lot of the time we see them just picking up hints and tips from their parents, and there's a whole raft of research around whether parents are very good at managing money as well. But very generically speaking, I mean, there are some pitfalls and dangers. Certainly, over borrowing and being out of control. Not taking control over finances and making sure that we have a financial plan in place for short-term, medium-term and long-term financial planning. And lastly, all of that just leads to most employees in that age group just moving from payday to payday without a long-term strategy as to how they're going to look after their finances.
Okay, and what do you think their priorities and preferences are?
Well, there is a bit of research that shows there's a definitive split into two, really, for these early career people. And I'm pretty old now, so I'm kind of looking down on their age group and trying to sort them into piles as to how they behave with money and finance. But there's a definitive split into two. So the first group are really easy. They've got a salary. They don't have too many. They don't have too many outgoings, and so they're consumers. So they're interested in clothes and holidays and socializing and the latest mobile phones. And then there's the second group, which may have learned these lessons from their parents, but they're slightly more astute and they're thinking about their short-term and medium-term financial planning. And by that, I mean things like they want to buy a house. Or they want to get married and start a family, or they're wanting to invest a small amount of money for the future. Now, nearly all of the people in that group just rely on automatic enrollment for pensions for their long-term financial planning. So they kind of think that that's sorted out. But certainly with their short-term financial planning, sometimes it's a little bit limited in how far they're planning ahead. So as I say, two definitive groups there. The consumers and the ones who want to save a little bit.
Okay, and finally, what type of benefits do you think has the greatest positive impact on the lives of those in early careers?
Well, I think it fits into that category of starting the savings journey. So it does seem to be on their mind a lot, which is saving for a deposit for a house, because we're a nation of homeowners. I would say they're less interested in those big things that our baby boomer generation or the older generation choose for everybody in the whole workplace. So less interested in pensions, life insurance, healthcare. One could argue, why would you give a young person a fantastic private medical insurance policy when they're fit and healthy? They're more interested in saving for things generally, or starting the savings journey. So something like a workplace savings scheme, if that's a workplace ISA that could be sponsored, If a company has a little bit more money, it might be a share plan that they can get involved in. But certainly the young ones are also interested in making a bit on the side. And I just want to mention here, like, the dangers of cryptocurrencies. Very few of them are going to be the next cryptocurrency millionaires, although they might think they are. But just to underline the fact that cryptocurrencies exist for illegal activities like tax evasion, money laundering, and things like that. So our younger generations should try and steer clear of those.
Yeah, and it is a theme I've seen as well in our corporate clients when we're doing webinars. We do recognise it's important not to generalise, and the best way really to make sure employees feel looked after is, there are options to tailor, work-life benefits to their own circumstances, and perhaps most importantly, that these are communicated well, not only at the recruitment phase, but consistently throughout each year of employment. In undertaking our anecdotal research, particularly in the early career demographic, is that we really found that employee benefits is not even a relevant language for this population. We had to reset our expectations and correct the language that we were using in order to understand what they want. One employee went as far as to say they don't know what an employee benefit is. They've worked for us for 3 years, and what was important to them was just the pay, as well as the social life of working for a large employer out of a head office. Common themes are about short-term savings, making money go further, the share incentive scheme, which we are lucky to have. We appreciate not all companies have share schemes available to staff, but if they're not accessible, there are workplace individual savings accounts with a centralised payment system that can easily be set up, and they're a truly effective way to help employees save. Making things easy to tuck money aside can truly help this money-limited population. Language, again, was highlighted by one of our employees who'd seen literature which used the scary terminology sacrifice rather than exchange, so salary sacrifice rather than salary exchange. Yeah, even in an EB specialist firm, errors can slip through. We always recommend to our clients the softer language of exchanges used for any salary exchange benefits, such as e-cars, cycle to work, and pension as well. So moving on to the next question, where applicable, have their views changed since they joined the working environment? So this was enlightening. No real themes in a small population, each comment unique about what is important. Again, it demonstrates how we need to think about our workers as individuals. Our perception of benefit is very much broadened out to include flexible working. Why not? That is a benefit when compared against the opposite, non-flexible working, not very attractive. Holiday flex came up. Again, why not? This allows employees to tailor their needs. Particularly, holiday buy can be really useful in years when they need extra time off. The helping me now comment, again, resonates with this demographic. Adrian, again, how have you seen employee requirements change over the last few years in the early career demographic?
Well, not really changed, but I did want to mention, because the help me now comment was the big one that came out from these questions. And I just want to say that there's a lot that we can do to help young people right now. We are in strange economic times because we've had a period of real economic stability leading up to a big period of economic instability at the moment. And it is weighing on employees' minds that, that they are starting to notice the cost of living. Now, we can't beat the cost of living rises that are going on at the moment, but there's a whole heap that we can do to help with mitigating some of the cost of living rises. And I think it's just taking time out to educate and explain to people how to manage their money and their finances and where to find better deals. So this might seem really dull, but I think that actually insurance is a really interesting topic to cover because there were some huge changes during 2022, which stopped insurance companies from offering better rates to new customers than they did to their existing customers. So it was trying to eliminate something called price walking. Now, as a result of that, the cost of insurance has gone up, and a lot of our young people do have insurance. I mean, if they're renting a flat or a house, then they're going to have some kind of insurance policy for their personal possessions. They might have a car, so they're going to have car insurance. And those changes in legislation means that cost has gone up. But not a lot of them shop around. When it just comes to renewal, they're used to, taking the renewal that's offered. So if they become the friends of meerkats and opera singers and other shopping sites online, then they may be able to, beat that increasing cost that we've been seeing. And also from the employer's point of view, there's lots that can be done that doesn't cost an awful lot of money. We're seeing employee benefits that are voluntary for the employees to take part in. So something like a voluntary dental product would be quite interesting, and I think quite popular for the younger generation, because they are really keen on having nice big white smiles. So even that could be a benefit that they really enjoy using, and at the same time it's not going to cost the employer a lot of money. Cycle to work again. If we're looking at the well-being of our younger generation, then we want financial well-being and physical well-being and mental well-being, and cycle to work just contributes to all of those things, as well as being a green scheme. We have seen a rise in where it's offered, the number of young people using DNA testing online to look at their health and well-being. It's just a really interesting benefit. They pay for it. It doesn't cost the employer very much money, but it's just really interesting. And even commuting to work, there's loads of travel cards that are set up for young people. There's a 16 to 24-year-old special offer. There's a 25 to 29-year-old special offer. I guess with all of these things, if we don't take the time out to tell them that these things exist, then they're not going to use them, and they're not going to be in charge of their finances, perhaps as much as they would otherwise have been in charge of their finances. So, I just, some observations about things that can be done that can help out right now in the current economic circumstances that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to understand that actually for this population, things haven't changed in terms of their perceptions and needs. Okay, so moving on to the final question, which was posed. I think it's fair to say some of our own workers, for example, Employee One, they've got a good understanding of typical benefits offered, and that's due to their job role. Not all of the employees questioned work in our employee benefit team. Pay, obviously, especially important, with some facing student loans and the repayment of those, others with huge rental bills mopping up any spare cash that they have, others still at home, as they will be for a number of years whilst they save for their own house, or indeed decide what they really want to do with their lives. One of our participants had come from a previous employer who paid all of the pension contributions without the member having to contribute, and that was their first job, so they came to us in their second job. It gave them really the false expectation that this is how all employer pension schemes work. However, for an employer of choice, why wouldn't you structure one of the most important benefits offered to employees in such a way as to cover the legal total minimum for auto-enrolment? And that would be either 7%, 8% or 9%, dependent on your pensionable salary definition. This way, all the salary which employees receive can then be used for their current life requirements. We've started to see opt-out rates and requests to pause membership increase following really the cost of living crisis that we're in. Nest is the default scheme for auto-enrolment. They publish their rates for opt-out. Opt-outs in the 12 months ending March 21, they were 10.1%. In 2020, they were 10. In 2019, they were only 8. But we have actually anecdotally again seeing across our employers people asking to cease membership as well as opting out. We've also seen a creep in the average employer contributions that are provided to employees across the UK. Alan Jones 2022 survey, really good survey if you participate with that one. It's noted that for professional workers, the average contribution by an employer is around 5.3%. So that's been creeping up gradually over a number of years. So keep an eye on that. With an early career demographic, why should they lose out on really important early pension savings if they just can't afford the minimum employee contributions at the moment, where the employer is only paying the minimum employer contribution of either 3 or 4%? So have a think about structuring, if you want to be an employer of choice, structuring total minimum contributions into the plan. Worth saying, the legal minimums, they were set to ensure that there were some savings being put aside for employees' long-term futures. However, with the legal minimum contributions, there has been a race to the bottom in terms of employer decisions about setting contribution rates. Some of our clients are asking whether they can continue to contribute and pay the employer contribution whilst employees cease membership due to cost of living constraints. Now, the answer is yes. It is technically possible, but it cannot be advertised to staff where the minimum total requirements are not fulfilled, as this would technically be an inducement and therefore a breach of safeguarding rules. So you need to be really, really careful if you're thinking about doing something that's nice, if you're not fulfilling the total minimum contributions for auto-enrolment. Other benefit options which are attractive to this population focus on making their money go further. So, you know, sounds obvious, but going further in terms of savings, supporting their work-life balance in terms of flexible or hybrid working, and really just making sure, again, that the pay is right. Adrian, what have you found in terms of requests for this population and for the ideal situation or being an employer of choice?
I love employee two on this slide. It's brilliant, isn't it? Because just give me a massive pay rise and everything will be fine. Yeah, a couple of things with that. Most employers can't afford to give a massive pay rise, and this is one of our own employees. So I know it's anonymous, so I don't know who it is, but we did get a fair pay rise in light of the current economic climate. But it underlines a point, I think, to me that. You can give people loads of money, but if they're really bad at managing their money, then it's not going to go very far and it's not going to impact them the way you want it to. So one of the things that one of my clients did was to offer employees a voucher. So it was a supermarket voucher every month during the winter months of 22-23, which was to combat the cost of living and the increased energy prices that we've seen. Now, hand in hand with that voucher was a webinar that we delivered, which was kind of compulsory for them to watch it in order to get the 40 quid voucher. So it was trying to help them to make sure they could manage their finances a little bit better. And again, we can't beat the cost of living, but we can mitigate a little bit of it. And then make sure that the money that was given to them was being used for the purpose it was being given, which was either fuel to get to work, or it was shopping because of the increased food prices. So that kind of thing can really help, and massive pay rise isn't the obvious answer to it, but perhaps education and if any of you on the webinar are thinking of implementing a non-contributory pension scheme, then let me know and I'll drop my CV over to you. But those things are incredibly expensive, so. It's not necessarily doing the incredibly expensive things to help people out. It's perhaps making sure that we educate them, and that they can buy a product or deal with a service that really has a positive impact on them.
Yeah, very good point there too. Look, at the start of this webinar, we noted that setting the benefit strategy correctly for the early career demographic is really only half the secret. Communicating the options in a language which is understood is really the other half of the secret. So using a range of communication options to really support this group is essential. They are tech natives within our colleagues, but don't just assume that means they consume benefit information best via technology. It is an essential base through which to communicate, but I will hand back over to Adrian now to talk about communication and language observations within this group.
So again, obviously my role is to deliver quite a lot of communications, be the explaining benefits or delivering financial education, just getting general groups together to talk about things that are in the news, like the current cost of living. And I'm a strong believer in taking the time out to actually physically talk to people, either like this or in a face-to-face seminar environment in the workplace. Because if we produce mountains of benefit booklets and information guides, and send them out to people, this particular age demographic in the younger at the younger end, they're not going to read them. And hand on heart, how many people on this webinar, when you get your annual pension statement through, do you sit down and actually read it? No, you don't. You just put it in a dusty drawer and put it to one side. So, if we do take the time to bring these things to life and talk about them, then they're much more likely to have a positive impact. We don't know what we don't know. And I always start from that point of view when we're designing some communications, because we need to use nice, clear language. We want to avoid things like acronyms and jargon. And there's tons of that's in the employee benefits world and in the financial world in particular. Everything's a 3-word acronym. So ditch those. Just talk about things in a very practical way. Remember that they probably haven't been in an environment where they've had financial well-being or financial education given to them before. So not to confuse them is to, and I always find myself when we deliver webinars apologizing that we're starting at a really basic level, but you need to make sure you carry everybody along with you, because they probably haven't had an introduction to that in the past. And from an employer's point of view, I mean, we've said it before early on, but the less than ideal situation is a bunch of baby boomers choosing products and services that Generation Z are expected to, value and contribute towards their total reward statement. They are less interested in pensions. They are less interested in big medical insurance policies, and they are more interested in what's going to help me now to achieve my aims and objectives over the short term and medium term. And the vast majority of them actually appreciate that auto-enrollment means that they've got a long-term financial plan, because pensions is a part of that. And they know they're building up a state pension, and they know they're building up a company pension. So just being clever about the choices. Having something that allows them to save directly from salary is becoming incredibly popular. And that's just because the younger generation would like that very much. So they can save for a house, so they can save for starting a family, so they can build up a nest egg for whatever they want to do, whether it's buy a fancy car or do the holiday of a lifetime thing. Those are the things that really help them. But for me, just lastly, before we go, from a financial education perspective, we do have to teach them the basics of budgeting, borrowing within your means, starting the savings journey, and why a pension is important to you as far as your long-term financial planning goes. And those things fit into that short-term, medium-term, and long-term financial planning that all of us should have an eye on whenever we're paid every month and looking at our annual financial spend on products and services. And then we can adjust them to meet the cost of living, or adjust them to meet something that might need to be done. But yes, the introductory courses are the way to go.
Thank you, Adrian. So look, we hope this webinar has provided some useful insight on tailoring benefits for employees in their early careers. Now, Adrian, if we can just open up and see if there have been any questions in whilst we're going through, or if anybody wants to pop any questions in the chat, by all means do so.
So I'm just on the right-hand side of your screen, you've got a Q&A panel. So please feel free, if you want to pop a comment in there, to do so. It's in private and in confidence, so not everybody else on the webinar can see it. The only one that I can see so far that came in as we were talking through was, do we need to have a different strategy for people in their later career who are reaching the end of their working careers, Hannah?
I would say vastly different. Again, tailoring things to individuals is an essential part of structuring a really good benefit package. People want to feel like people. They don't want to feel like a number on a spreadsheet. As Misha said at the beginning, this is first of 3 webinars. The second one, we will be looking at mid-career, and then the third we'll be looking at late career. So these are 2 weeks apart. And again, if you can't make the actual session live on the day, the recordings will be sent out. So please, again, make sure you register for those. And we'll be covering the secrets for later career in the third session in February.
Also, just one quick question that came in while we were covering that one. Hannah, can you give more information on cycle to work schemes? So I guess just how they work and what the benefits are.
Yeah, so cycle to work schemes are a really good benefit for early career, but any stage in career. As an employer, you do have to have the employee using their bike or cycle equipment for part of their commute to work. So if you're an employer who has no office locations and everybody works from home, then technically you can't offer a cycle to work scheme anymore. But if you do have employees working in an office, cycle to work schemes are basically interest-free loans where employees take out and hire a bicycle or safety equipment and then pay back. In effect, it's a hire purchase, so pay back that money over normally a 1 or 2 year period. They're really, really tax efficient. So what that means is they use salary exchange. So in terms of their pay, the cost of that loan or hire purchase agreement comes off their pay before income tax and national insurance. So they're making really good savings and purchasing this cycle equipment tax efficiently. They can then use that cycle and safety equipment for their free time too. So it isn't solely for using it for part of a commute. Generally, it hasn't been policed by the government, but yeah, just a flag from a technical perspective, they do need to technically use it for part of that commute to work.
I hope they don't have a check on it, because my cycle to work scheme, I live in Yorkshire and our head office is in Leicestershire, so I'm not going to pedal down the M1. Just very quickly, one last question, which has just come in while you were covering the cycle to work scheme, but the wording is, who can you work with on workplace savings schemes and ISAs? Any recommendations? Because we're a small charity. But Hannah, I guess they're looking for a brand or a company that can help with workplace savings.
Yeah, actually, it's quite a new market. So there are a number of providers in this space. Typically, you would need a minimum number of employees in order to set up a scheme. But there are providers that, if you're a very small charity, so sub 100 lives, which might well be, the choices there are fairly limited. But I think it is an expanding area that we'll see more and more providers come into in the future. What I can do separately will be circulating, I think, the Q&As potentially out to all participants. So we'll do a little bit of work if you've got less than 100 lives, just to see what providers there are in that space.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Other than that, Hannah, those were the questions that have come in. So
okay, brilliant. Thank you. So thank you very much for participating for this webinar. You'll be sent a copy of the recording after, and also if you would like to sit in on the next set of webinars, please remember to register. The invites and the reminders will be coming out shortly from PayCheck. So thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see some of you on the next session to carry on. But if you have any other questions following on from that, you all should have my email address when we issued the invite. So any other questions that you think after the session today, please send them through to me, and I'm more than happy to forward them over to Hannah. And if a conversation is necessary to discuss their services further, then you can arrange to have that conversation with Hannah at a later date. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.